Good afternoon. I'm Jim Kirk, publisher and executive editor of Crain's Chicago Business. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our sponsored webcast, the Taiwan-U.S. Business Forum in the Midwest, Select Chicago, Select Taiwan. In partnership with the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Chicago, Crain's Content Studio will be hosting a series of webcasts featuring experts and thought leaders discussing the mutually beneficial industrial links between Taiwan and the Midwest, and with Chicago as the hub, including bilateral cooperation in important industries, fields, and trade and investment. Our webcast today will focus on economic competitiveness, chips, and innovation. The global shortage of microchips, key elements in a multitude of consumer electronic goods, is a major economic challenge. In this webcast, we'll hear from key representatives who will discuss how the Midwest and Taiwan can play a role as allies in trade and in building a diverse and resilient supply chain for the U.S. Sponsoring today's webcast is the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Chicago. I'm very pleased to introduce a terrific panel today to discuss this important topic. First, Michael Fosnacht, President and CEO of World Business Chicago, a public-private nonprofit partnership that drives inclusive economic development, job creation, supports business, and promotes the city as the place for international business to invest. Today, World Business Chicago serves a critical role in promoting Chicago as a leading global city and driving inclusive and equitable recovery focused on the city's high-growth areas of TD&L, manufacturing, life sciences and healthcare, tech, VC, and innovation. Also joining us today is the Honorable Michael Frerichs, Illinois State Treasurer. Treasurer Frerichs was first elected Illinois State Treasurer in 2014 and re-elected in 2018. In Illinois, the Treasurer is the state's chief investment and banking officer. The office invests money on behalf of the state and local units of government and manages approximately $35 billion. Next, Dr. Jay Lee, Vice Chairman of the Foxconn Technology Group. Dr. Lee has 40 years of experience within industry, government, and academia. Prior to his current role, he served as Vice Chairman of Foxconn Industrial Internet and is currently on leave from the University of Cincinnati, where he serves as an Ohio Eminent Scholar, L.W. Scott Alter Chair Professor, and University Distinguished Professor. He is founding director of the National Science Foundation's Industry University Cooperative Research Center on Intelligent Maintenance Systems, as well as the founding director of Industrial AI Center. Finally, Rupert Hammond Chambers, President of the U.S. Taiwan Business Council. Mr. Hammond Chambers was born and raised in Scotland before emigrating to the United States in 1987. He began working for the U.S. Taiwan Business Council in 1994 and was elected president of the council in November of 2000. As the trade relationship between the United States, Taiwan, and China continues to evolve, he has worked to develop the council's role as a strategic partner to its members with the continuing goal of positioning the council as a leader in empowering American companies in Asia through value and excellence. And joining to say a few words before we begin our discussion is Director General Johnson Sen Jeng. Johnson Sen Jeng has been heading up Taiwan's main mission to serve the U.S. in the Midwest since January of this year. Prior to that, he served 2 years as Director General of European Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Taipei, and has spent more than 20 years in diplomatic service in both Taipei as well as Washington, D.C. Welcome, Director General Johnson Sen Jeng.
Well, thank you, Jim. On behalf of Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Chicago, I would like to welcome and appreciate your participation into this webcast on economic competitiveness, primarily in the areas of innovation and the semiconductor manufacturing chips. I also want to take this opportunity to express our sincere appreciation for U.S. government's current donation of 2.5 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines to Taiwan. And during this difficult time, it once again exemplifies our long-standing friendship and tradition of helping each other in need. Taiwan-U.S. stronger together. Today's webcast is a third online event under the umbrella of Taiwan-U.S. Business Forum in the Midwest, which initiated this March, and it demonstrates our continued efforts to feature Chicago as a powerful hub for Taiwan-U.S. business cooperation. The previous two webinars discussed how we could work together to advance our common values and interests in global high-tech supply chains and the agriculture economy. Last November, Taiwan-U.S. inaugurated the U.S.-Taiwan Economic Prosperity Partnership Dialogue, EPP Dialogue, to cover a broad range of economic security issues, including clean network, 5G network, semiconductor supply chains, electrical vehicles, global public health, and investment screening. We also concluded 2 agreements in high-tech science cooperation and the Mandarin Chinese learning programs to fulfill the spirit of EPP dialogue. Recently, Taipei and Washington have worked together to try to resume trade and investment talks. In this regard, it is critical for us to bring the outcomes of our bilateral policy-level dialogues to local states and cities to make concrete deliverables for both our businesses. It is great to see Taiwan universities actively participate into DPI, Discovery Partner Institute, supported by Chicago City and Illinois state government to develop tech talent and turn science R&D into a business model. National Taiwan University also signed an MOU with Northwestern University to enhance their cooperation on Mandarin Chinese learning programs. We believe there will be more of this kind to come in the near future. Taiwan is the U.S. top 9 trading partner in the world. According to IMD, Institute of Management Development, Taiwan is also ranked the 8th most competitive economy on earth. With the great talent and robust capital market the Midwest can offer, we encourage more Taiwan business presence here in this region to prosper with their American partners and to support our values-based economies, which are open, democratic, and sustainable. Finally, I want to thank Jim Kirk, the publisher of Crane Chicago Business, to moderate this webcast. We plan to have 2 more webcasts in the near future to talk about the fasteners and auto industry supply chain and AI applied to sports industry. We look forward to working together with you to talk about our cooperation and support our businesses. I hope you enjoy webcast and feel free to give us some feedback. Let us know how to help you more. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Director General Chang, for those remarks. Now on to our discussion. Again, welcome and thank you for joining us. Let's get started. To kick us off, I'd like each of you to take a couple of minutes to share some remarks on your work as it relates to the Midwest and Taiwan, serving as allies in trade and in building a resilient supply chain for the U.S. Michael Fasnacht, can you kick us off?
Sure. Thank you, Jim, and thank you for having me on this panel. It's a great occasion to have so many great, smart people discussing an important topic. And when I saw the headline of this panel, it's for me all about the importance of manufacturing. For both Chicago and Taiwan, we have seen the pandemic has put a highlight how important manufacturing is on 2 sides. One, we need strong partnerships with our friends in Taiwan. As well, we have to figure out as well, what are we doing in the United States of America? What are we doing in Chicago and Chicagoland to both have deep partnerships, but also have some of the critical manufacturing process close by, because the pandemic has shown to be world-class in manufacturing is critical for the growth of the economy.
Great. Thanks for those. Treasurer Frerichs, how about you?
Great. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Dr. Lee, Mr. Hammond-Chambers, Mr. Fasnacht. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And Mr. Kirk, thank you for hosting this wonderful event. It is in a different time, and hopefully very soon, perhaps, we'll share each other's ideas in person and also through video conference. We might meet in Chicago, sharing coffee or tea while looking out at Lake Michigan, the 3rd largest freshwater body in North America. Or we can gather at the University of Chicago, one of the finest universities in the world, identifying the well-known reputations of nearby educational institutions and how they created a world-class workforce and how they attract the industry leaders of tomorrow here to the Midwest, here to Chicago and Illinois. We can arrange a tour of Argonne National Laboratory in nearby Lamont. Argonne is our country's first national laboratory, and as part of the U.S. Department of Energy, researches such vital issues as renewable energy, supercomputing, and national security. From there, we might take a short drive down to Batavia to visit Fermi Lab, another national laboratory that is part of the U.S. Department of Energy, known around the world for its breakthroughs on high-energy particle physics and its work on Higgs boson, or the God particle. Or we could drive down to my neck of the woods, the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, past the sea of Illinois soybeans you know so well, to learn about the immensely regarded research park. Multinational and publicly traded companies work here side by side, along with startup companies on the verge of the next innovation. Taiwanese students have tested their theories here since at least 1922. And along the way, I would mention the availability of investment capital my office facilitates through our Growth and Innovation Fund. We aim to invest about $1 billion to attract, assist, and retain quality tech-enabled businesses in Illinois. It would be a grand tour highlighting fresh water, world-class research universities, world-renowned exploratory laboratories, multinational companies, and unbelievable startups. And it would, without a doubt, show you why Illinois is the land of opportunity for Taiwanese companies. I look forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Treasurer, and I share your looking forward to gathering all in person. Hopefully here soon. Dr. Jay Lee, would you like to go next?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for inviting us to join this panel. I think this is a very critical moment, right? Since for the last year and a half, due to the COVID pandemic, I think global industry has been impacted because the demand and supply issues. Now with all the logistics problems, I think that now global manufacturing have been facing challenges trying to get the parts in time to deliver the goods in time, right? So certainly in Midwest, and there's a tremendous opportunity in workforce and also talents, also a great transportation network. We believe has been a great opportunity to invest in Midwest. As you all know, Foxconn started investing in Midwest, Wisconsin, several years ago. We have been developing a science and technology park in Racine, which is about 15 minutes north of the Illinois border, in southeast part of Wisconsin. So this particular park, right, over about 1,000 acres, which consists of three major components. One is called the smart manufacturing. We been manufacturing the digital infrastructure, such as our high performance computing and the server, etc. You also have seen the new announcement that Foxconn will be building a EV in the United States, right? So this is a new option, and we are still evaluating many different sites. Certainly, we're making the EV. It would be a new product platform to drive electrification and smart energy, also the future smart data, how to drive the three digital economy very differently. The third things we're doing right now, we're providing a high performance computing cloud-based services. So Foxconn has been well known for manufacturing companies, but certainly for the last 40 years, 4 decades, Foxconn has learned a great deal about how to develop a new technology, not just to make things, but also to provide a great services, right? The future. So the Foxconn transformation has been developing for the last few years. We call the Foxconn a 3.0. 1.0 is how to focus on the good things we do and find those weaknesses. So Foxconn 2.0 is to accelerate the digital transformation, and Foxconn 3.0, we're trying to build a new industry like EV is one, and the digital health number 2, and also the future robotics number 3. Of course, there are 3 critical technologies: AI, 5G, and semiconductor. We call it 3+3. So we believe this 3+3 opportunity will be able to provide more opportunity for collaboration, also for developing future next generation workforce. Thank you.
Great, thank you, and thank you for being here. Lastly, Rupert Hammond-Chambers, can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your work as it relates to trade between the Midwest and Taiwan?
Certainly, Jim. Thank you very much for your leadership of the panel, and to Johnson Jung and his colleagues at the TICO office in Chicago. I certainly counsel all those who may have an opportunity to watch this panel, should they be interested in learning more about doing business with Taiwan. Johnson and his colleagues are very well placed. I had the privilege of working for the U.S. Taiwan Business Council, a trade association that has existed since 1976, when the United States recognized Taiwan as opposed to China, and through that point in time has acted as a platform to promote business relations between the two countries across the board in all sectors. I think just quickly, I would like to touch on why Taiwan and why Chicago, why Illinois, and why the Midwest. Why Taiwan? The two things I'd like to touch on: intellectual property rights and trade secrets protection and trust, essential building blocks for commercial relationships. And no more so have we learned that in the harder times that we have experienced with the Chinese as that relationship has developed. And indeed, there are many people in the Midwest who have had a harder time in respect to unfair trade practices with China. That is not the case with Taiwan. Taiwan is an economy that we have done business with for many years, and that business has been based on trust and respect for intellectual property and respect for trade secrets. And why Chicago? Why Illinois and Midwest? Well, I certainly don't want to steal the thunder from those who know better than I on this panel, but I would note from somebody looking outside in, business friendly, city, state, and the states surrounding it. It's a competitive environment. People are drawn there because they can find good business friendly governments to support them. Geography, look at a map. Chicago and the surrounding area is very well positioned when you look at the United States. And I think critically, also I want to hit, and I hope we will learn more of, perhaps in the chip area, as more fabs are built and the US reestablishes itself as a manufacturing base for chips, is the extraordinary strength of STEM in Chicago, in Illinois, and in the Midwest generally. There is going to be accelerated demand for students out of STEM, and the Midwest bats significantly above its weight, particularly as in other parts of the country, academic institutions, in some instances, are becoming more political, and STEM is being downplayed. But we are going to need more STEM students, and they are going to need to be of a high caliber. The Midwest, Chicago, and Illinois are all very well positioned to provide executives and workers in this area. Thanks so much, Jim.
Great, thanks, Rupert. That's a great introduction. All right, let's get into it here. Question for all of you to kick this off. Taiwan and the U.S. seem really well positioned for bilateral trade advancements in the sense that they're both democracies with free market economies. They have a track record of respecting human rights and the rule of law, including intellectual property rights, as Rupert just talked about. Both countries also have strong entrepreneurial cultures and invest in R&D. How important is it for trade that Taiwan and the U.S. speak the same language in those areas? Treasurer, I'd like you to kick it off.
From traditional low-cost manufacturing into higher tech manufacturing and advances in intellectual property. So much of our country's worth and the Dow's worth is in intellectual property. It's important that that is respected around the world. If companies are going to continue to invest, pour money in, they have to know they're going to get a return on that. And if they work with a partner who then just steals that and reproduces it, it's going to be a hindrance to innovation. It's going to be a hindrance to research. And that's how we really remain at the forefront. I think Taiwan is a small island, not a lot of arable land in terms of percentage of their country. They have learned to invest in education. They've learned to invest in their brain power. And like us, I think they've realized that the future is going to be in intellectual property. And the only way this works is if we have a system of laws and a system of countries that respect that intellectual property. I just think it is so very important. And as Rupert also pointed out, we are interested in engineering and sciences here in the Midwest, unlike other parts of the country. I live down in Champaign. They produce more engineers and computer scientists at the University of Illinois than they do at Caltech, Stanford, and I believe Berkeley combined. We're really just pumping out the workforce we need to be at the forefront here. But as we're very much aware, we need partners. And Taiwan has been a good partner.
Rupert, can you add to that?
Certainly, Jim. Thank you for the opportunity to. And I would certainly associate myself with the comments that have just been made. Just to hammer this nail a wee bit more, to give a little history here, back in 03 to 05, Taiwan's intellectual property rights record was poor, but there was a significant shift. Part of it was pressure from the United States, recognizing the potential for Taiwan as a partner, and part of it came from internally in Taiwan, critically from companies like Mr. Lee's, Jay's company, TSMC, as they started to amass more patents and their own intellectual property. There was domestic pressure in Taiwan to strengthen intellectual property and trade secrets laws. And then they have the geography of being close proximity to China. And of course, China's predatory trade practices are directed at Taiwan as they are towards us as well. So Taiwan strengthened its laws to the extent that by the middle part of that decade, not only had they become an important partner and an important standard regionally in that was recognized here by the United States. And what you see as a reflection of that is companies, the absolute leaders of Taiwan, Jay's company, Foxconn in the Midwest, TSMC down in Phoenix, at least for the moment, willing to bring top-level technology and marry that with top-level technology and top-level workers here in the United States to provide products, goods, and services, not just for the US market, but potentially for the rest of the world too. That's what we want to see more of. We want to see more, not just, obviously it's virtuous to sell into the Taiwan market. That's an important market, not just in tech, but in ag. But we also want to see the United States expand its rightful place as a global leader in manufacturing, as has been touched on before.
Great. Michael Fashnak?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Just to add one thought, I think sometimes we are focusing so much on great large companies like Foxconn. I would highlight as well like the big startup culture we have in both countries and cities. And I would also like, ask, Taiwan to focus on the startup culture we have here in Chicago that's really driven by amazing talent, by great universities and research centers. I believe the investment in quantum technology, the Department of Energy is doing, and some of the startups now, the huge opportunity for investing, not just always on large scale, but smaller scale that then will grow. If you look at, we just announced this morning, we have the 7th unicorn, Chicago-based unicorn since January 1st. We never had that kind of number of unicorns. And I think, what I believe the future of relationship is Israel, not just large, but also from the ground up, because the startup culture in the EV ecosystem and others will drive the future.
And Dr. Jay Lee, from the corporate perspective on those ties?
Yeah, thank you. I think that as a global company, right? There are many global companies around the world. We all have to understand how to create the future opportunity for collaboration. As a global company, Foxconn ranked number 26 Fortune 500 company. Certainly, we have a footprint everywhere, right, worldwide. But whenever Foxconn involved in the future development, the global scale, we have to focus on 3 E, I call. Number 1, economic development. Of course, you work with the Midwest, you work with any part of the world, you have to focus on economic development for the company, for the region, and for the community. Number 2, very important, for the employment, workforce, right? So you have to develop the workforce that drive the new generation of skills and talents. Number 3 is very important, education, right? You have to invest in develop education linkages and partnerships, eventually drive the new curriculum, new STEM program, and even the technical colleges students come to provide intern co-ops, etc., etc. Eventually, you engage skills learning together into the future workforce. So we call the 3E strategy. We believe in Midwest and Wisconsin and the talents in the greater Chicago area have a great education networks, right? As I mentioned, last year, a year and a half, I physically traveled to many schools. In Wisconsin, Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, Northwestern, IIT, and everywhere. So UIC, I physically went to the campus, took our executive. We spoke to them. We spoke to those kids. We first tell them what the future manufacturing technology looks like, right? How can we develop AI to predict machine before they failure? How can we use big data to find those invisible problems in the quality, etc.? So a lot of kids are very excited. We recruit quite a number of them, right? We call the Foxconn Future Leader Program, FLP. And many students came. They became our today's very talented employees. So we believe the long-term engagement will further develop more opportunities.
Great. So obviously, Taiwan's importance in the global supply chain was underscored as nations with severe COVID outbreaks face supply and manufacturing disruptions that led to the current microchip shortage. Kind of a two-part question here. How can the partnership with Taiwan help businesses here overcome such disruptions and avoid them in the future? And also, how Taiwan accounts for 65% of the global chip making market share by revenue. How will it be a key player in resolving this supply chain issue? And I'll throw it over to the treasurer first for this one.
Well, I'm not sure the treasurer is the best person to comment on this, but I think that when we're investing, we think that diversity is important to manage risks, and there is an awful lot of risk when you put all of your eggs into one basket. And so I think it's important that we have a relationship with Taiwan. They are the largest producer of these chips, but we want to see diversity because when you see an island nation that might be under threat at some point, it could disrupt our supply chains. But as they look to create factories and build factories around the world, it diminishes some of that risk. I think that partnerships like this are important. We also have to be aware that we're managing risks and diversifying.
Great.
And I can just add on here. I think it's critically important for the United States and for Chicago to bring some of the, especially manufacturing 4.0 processes and high-end manufacturing skills back to the United States of America and to Chicago. It's a security topic. It's a growth topic. And I think we need partners like the great companies from Taiwan and others who help us with that. But it is clearly that it's long-term not sustainable if any city or country is depending on just one player or two players or three players. We need a diversification. I think the EV ecosystem has shown that. And I think there are huge opportunities to have more and even deeper partnerships than before. And I really believe that quantum technology will change this game again, because I think the United States of America can become a leader on the manufacturing side on that, as well as Taiwan. And I think that is, the Biden administration has seen that. They're putting money as well, strategic in the right places. And I think Chicago is extremely well placed to play a leading role on that.
And Dr. Jay Lee, from a corporate company user of chips side, what do you see as kind of the way through this at this point? I
think there are several opportunities. I believe Taiwan early years, right? We start many companies start getting into the 3C industry, computer, and the consumer electronics, and many things like chips. So basically, that has a great foundation like semiconductor and precision manufacturing, right? Like Foxconn, it came from Hon Hai Precision, the precision industry. And if you go to the Taichung area, which is about several hundreds machine tool supply all connect together into one place. That's a high density of a precision machine, right? I believe that 5C, the future will be 5C industry. First, of course, chip. Second is a computing industry, right? The future computing, embedded and the smart, high performance computing and large scale. Number 3 is communications, and it's 5G, 6G, and et cetera, all the small cell technologies. And number 4 is the very important connection technology, how to connect things like EV, the vehicle connections, display connections, city connections. We are building smart light pole near traffic lights, and with the charger stations, and also the 5G camera. So there's a lot of security surveillance system connect together. So vehicle become a sensor. When they drive the smart vehicle, the vehicle can sense how's the road conditions in the city. So we can give a prioritization where to repair first. And the last one is cloud and cyber technology. So the 5C, right? Those 5C, I believe, are going to be new generation of opportunity for many companies to collaborate. And with the Midwest, like Chicago region, yeah.
Great. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion about the cost of the shortage. The microchip shortage has cost a number of industries here in the U.S. Is there relief around the corner, Rupert? What are you seeing from your perspective?
I regret to say and be the bearer of bad news. No, there isn't relief around the corner. Mm-hmm. The semiconductor industry is like an aircraft carrier. It doesn't turn on a dime. It points in a direction, and it takes a great deal of time and effort to move it in a new direction. That said, to start that process, you first have to recognize that there needs to be an adjustment. And for several reasons, a number of different reasons, there has been a significant wake-up call in what's going on if we just stay in the chip space for a second, in the semiconductor industry. And we are starting to see the roots for a different setup and balance. I really like the comments that the panelists have made about the opportunity to shift this and provide more balance across the Pacific, but not just in manufacturing. Manufacturing is obviously key. Mr. Biden's government is talking about up to 10 new fabs with government-funded money that would contribute, not in totality, but contribute. And of course, you've got companies like TSMC with capex commitments over the next 3 years of $100 billion. And that's just where we are right now. That figure may still go up. So massive commitments from the companies themselves. Manufacturing, yes, but what we also want to see, and I'm sure no one's losing sight of it, is R&D, research and development, and then the clustering that goes around that. All the different companies that come up in the ecosystem, the arc of businesses that support the systems integrators, like Dr. Lee's Foxconn. There are a whole array of companies. If you you marry that up with good STEM support from the schools, where the top people are going in, they're working at these companies, they're developing intellectual property, and then some of them are coming out, and they're standing up their own businesses. It is not a quick fix. It is a long game. But if you get the right mix right, it can be incredibly virtuous, and it can have a significant impact over time on entire regions. So it's absolutely worth playing this game, as long as we ensure that it's being played fairly. And I think that's where we're really beginning to get our arms around where we are today and what we need to do to balance things better in the future.
And kind of building on those comments, Rupert, how should we look going forward? The way in which we view this partnership with Taiwan. Are there things to learn from what's happening with the microchip issue and building new opportunities between the two, the U.S. and particularly the Midwest and Taiwan out of this?
Well, there are a couple of quick thoughts on this front. First, the chip issue is a geostrategic issue as well. You can't get out of the chip issue without talking about U.S.-China relations and China's position within the world and how it sees it. Chips, as we all know, chips go into everything. Some have called it the new oil, right, of this period. As a consequence, we as a country, when we think about U.S. national interest and U.S. national security, need to bind ourselves to other countries with like-minded interests. Japan is an obvious example, and there was Mr. Biden and Prime Minister Suga talking about the semiconductor industry and supply chain integrity. There's an important opportunity to push together the strengths that Taiwan have, the strengths that Japan has, and the strengths that the United States has, and not just those three, but they certainly make sense in North Asia, to come up with the sum total equal to greater than the individual parts. Those are the sorts of alliances that we want to build, not necessarily defensively in respect to response to China, although that is important, but proactively and forward-leaning. And it helps that we are like-minded democracies, that we share the same values, that we are pushing in the same direction. And chips can be very much at the heart of many of the different things that we've touched on today, like Michael's note about quantum computing, AI, LOT, and a whole range of other areas.
Treasurer, can you add to that, given the what you see from more of a kind of a 30,000-foot level for the state and the region?
Yeah, I think this international trade with partners who view the world the same way is important. Although it's important that we diversify and that we manage risks in our supply chains, we should also allow certain companies or countries to do what they do best. I would say that Taiwan has shown a great aptitude at what Rupert described as the new oil chip creation, but it's a small, mainly mountainous island that has trouble producing enough food. And we here in the Midwest are in between all of our great manufacturing centers and our great institutions of higher education, training, and workforce. We're surrounded by fertile fields that produce and send a lot of food to Taiwan. Chips are important for business, but food is very important for our people. And Taiwan has been a great trading partner and a great source for Illinois-based agriculture. And so it's important, especially when you saw some of those trade fights between President Trump and President Xi and them and China not wanting to take our food. Taiwan was there and stepped up. And it's important that we have relationships like this. Not only does Taiwan produce a lot of chips, they also produce training for a lot of not just people in manufacturing, but for politicians like, Guoli Chenggong Dashui provided some great education for the Illinois State Treasurer. So it's revealing my bias here.
Great. And Michael Fashnot, from the Chicago perspective, your thoughts on potential opportunities coming out of this chip squeeze that we're seeing at this point?
I think the one topic we haven't talked about is some of the key ingredients for chip. I think like rare earth mining has been completely forgotten until probably like 12 months ago. That's a key topic as well, where we are reliant just on a few players, because that's one of the components that ultimately drive chips and as well as components of the EV system. So I think you see a lot of more attention about that. How can we be some of the own producer, a little more independent, and like the treasures that much more diversified in our supply chain. So I think the whole pandemic put a highlight on the supply chain challenges, and I think there will be some positive coming out of it. It will deepen partnerships with like players like Foxconn. It will also create more interest and focus on having some of them in Chicago, and in Illinois and beyond.
Right. So last November, Taiwan and the United States established the Taiwan-U.S. Economic Prosperity Partnership Dialogue. It's an initiative to work together to respond to these impacts on both countries and expand and deepen the Taiwan-U.S. partnership. What are some of the key benefits we'll see from this initiative, both in the near term and on the horizon? Rupert, do you have a thought on that?
I do, Jim. Thank you so much. The EPPD was a platform that was launched last year by Mr. Trump and his colleagues, primarily under Secretary Clark at the State Department. It was primarily born out of some frustration in the trade relationship, as it had founded on disagreements over agricultural imports, namely pork with the steroid ractopamine in it. And the State Department launched EPPD with a view to provide a platform for strategic dialogue. In the short term, that platform will allow us to handle short to medium term risks in certain areas. And the ones that they've identified, supply chain integrity, chips, energy is a very big area that they want to push into, and absolutely and surely an area of interest to the city of Chicago, Illinois, and to the Midwest, not just in renewables, but across the board. But Taiwan is pushing heavily into renewables, and so an exciting potential opportunity. And I think in the longer term, it fits with the concurrent theme of this panel, that we want to see a renewed focus on balance, so that we have a virtuous and healthy trade partnership, where we are trading in goods and services with each other, because that's important. However, that there is also good balance in that trade relationship. And the EPPD is going to allow us to manage that. And then finally, the geostrategic current issues. And hopefully, I touched on it last time, the issue of Japan, for example, in supply chains, reshoring in the semiconductor industry. There's so much potential, particularly Taiwan's very close relationship with the Japanese, for the US, Taiwan, and Japan to broaden our perspective and our ambition, not just from a bilateral virtuous relationship, but to cooperate trilaterally and in a triumvirate, if you will, the old Roman word.
And, Taiwan's largest microchip maker, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corp., reportedly began construction on a $12 billion advanced chip manufacturing plant in Arizona, with production to start in 2024. Just curious in what ways that development will change or evolve the trading relationship between the U.S. and Taiwan. And Michael Fasnacht, can you kind of look at that and as a company moving to the U.S. to produce chips here, what kind of signals does that send in the relationship?
Two comments. First of all, I have to say, why not Chicago and Illinois?
Right.
Would have been a great place for Foxconn to be, and I expect there will be more investment coming. Arizona is a great state, but clearly we have more talent and more entrepreneurial spirit, so we have done this even better. No, I think it's a great thing. I think it intensifies the partnership between the United States and Taiwan to invest such a large sum and bring talent and expertise. So we need that. So I'm very excited, thrilled about this announcement. And just with the right wrinkle. So the next announcement, I'm sure I will see about Chicago and Chicagoland.
And then Dr. Jay Lee, maybe from the Foxconn perspective of having that kind of movement here in the U.S., what does that signal to you?
Yeah, well, Foxconn has a group, a semiconductor group as well, led by our chairman, Liu, who previously served as a executive leader for that group. Basically, if you take semiconductor as a whole ecosystem, it takes a long time to develop a strong ecosystem, right? I normally call the semiconductor has 5 or 6 M's. The M, first M is materials, very fundamental materials develop, right? Eventually, you get to the fundamental things of even nanoscience. The second thing is a machine. Semiconductor we call foundry, the tool means machine equipment. We have Applied Materials, Lam Research, and many other companies making those great machines, tool equipment. Number 3 is very important. It's called the method, the foundry. You need to develop new talents managing the foundry. The foundry, which how you physically schedule automation work. And if you look 12-inch wafer foundry and highly automated system, many sophisticated management manufacturing processes. So eventually the foundry method is very critical to develop new generation of a workforce. Number 4 is the measurement metrology, because when you get down to 7 nano, 5 nano, even below, certainly you have a metrology system to do a yield estimation, yield measurement. It's very difficult. You have a KOA 10 core. They are one of them. There are many companies, right, built as a next generation smart measurement technologies. And lastly, not least, is the model. Right? The model means AI. In order to drive the new generation of semiconductor, you need to use a more computational algorithm to predict, for example, when you wafer processing different recipes, how you do a maintenance, right? Maintenance. And traditionally we do fail and fix. Now we do predict and prevent, right? So the maintenance model is very important, not just traditional model. So eventually the 5M, I believe, going to be drive the future, the semiconductor supply chain in the ecosystem, right?
Great. Back in December, the official representatives for the U.S. and Taiwan, known as AIT, and for Taiwan and the U.S., known as TECRO, signed a science and technology agreement to strengthen cooperation between the two countries in science, technology, and related fields. I want to talk to you guys about what benefits do you see from this agreement for companies in the Midwest and the U.S. overall. Treasurer, you talked at the outset about the immense amount of STEM talent coming out of Illinois institutions. Can you talk a little bit about this and the importance of it?
I can speak very broadly that cooperation is so very important, and so is competition, fair competition. Michael asked, why not Chicago? Why not Illinois? I think it's fairly clear that when there were negotiations about where Foxconn might put themselves, there were politics involved. There's an administration that wanted to give a win to a red state and to not give a win to a blue state. I think when the states compete, Illinois stacks up very well, whether it be our location, our transportation, whether it be rail or roads or air, our workforce, the quality of our educational institutions, lots of things, we compete. So competition, fair competition is important. We see this with other countries also, and so their practices don't really encourage fair competition. But cooperation is also very important, and that means frequent dialogue. Rupert mentioned triumvirate, and my first thought is both of those triumvirates in Rome both degraded into civil war. But they lasted when the three partners were working together, made very clear what their goals were, and had each other's interests at heart. When certain members of the triumvirate started putting their own interests above, or communication broke down, the whole system broke down. And so I think these sort of agreements, with constantly revisiting them, making sure that we're in constant dialogue, are really the key to cooperation. You can't just sign a deal, walk away, and think everything is great. It's a continual process.
And Michael Fosnacht, can you expand on that, given what you see from a world business perspective and trying to attract more business here?
Yeah, I think the pandemic has shown we are all connected, and we need deeper and deeper partnerships to solve the biggest problems that we all face. If it's climate change, technology progress, diversity, we need each other. So I'm very excited about that's what we focus on World Business Chicago. How can we make then Chicago as attractive for solving these biggest human problems we are facing? And that's what I think we learned from the pandemic. That's why I like a forum like this, where we're exchanging. We might not agree on everything, but we need each other to really build a future for our children.
Great. Rupert, anything to add on these kinds of partnerships and cooperation and what they can yield?
Well, just perhaps just a frame for everybody how difficult it can be for Taiwan at times to provide to access platforms to talk to foreign governments, and the political isolation the Chinese work so hard to box Taiwan into. It is incredibly important that Taiwan have an opportunity to sign agreements and provide platforms that go beyond politics and changes in government, that provide stability, that provide continuity in policy is where it's possible. Some of that is obviously related to any agreement that you do, but it's a particularly acute problem for Taiwan. And as a consequence, an agreement like this or the Economic Prosperity Partnership Dialogue, these are essential platforms for successful business cooperation for the U.S. and Taiwan.
One last question before we get into kind of the closing statements here. We've talked a lot about microchips, but obviously we're in the middle of one of the biggest agricultural states in the country. Taiwan is currently the 7th largest export market for American agricultural products, which is of keen interest, obviously, to the Midwest and Illinois. What ways can we increase that market access for those producers and otherwise enhance our trading partnership with Taiwan? Treasurer, I'll let you kick that off.
Yeah, I had mentioned that earlier. I grew up in the middle of corn and soybean fields in east central Illinois. My family's been farming them for generations. When I served in the Illinois State Senate, I was on the Agriculture and Conservation Committee and became the chair. And as I've traveled to Taiwan, we've talked about agriculture. It's an island that has some needs feeding itself. We produce in excess. We've seen that Taiwan produces a lot of chips that we need. These relationships are so very important, and it's more than just one industry. If you truly are partners, if agreements, you'll allow your people to compete against each other, and you'll be confident that our strengths will complement theirs and their strengths will complement each other. It's when we begin building walls and we start shouting at each other and demonizing each other that this system begins to fall apart. And if that fell apart, then we lose export markets for our crops, and we lose access to the chips for our manufacturing. It's just why I was so happy to be invited part of this today. The only state treasurer doesn't have a huge direct role, although he has a long personal tie to Taiwan, which is happy to be part of this.
Right. Rupert, any thoughts on that?
You know, as you mentioned, Taiwan is a top procurer of American agricultural products. I've driven through the part of the state that you grew up in, and it not only is it beautiful, so for anybody who hasn't visited, go for this import into the United States. I absolutely loved my time in the Midwest. But also Taiwan, from a per capita standpoint, in some categories, it's number one for procuring for agricultural products. So already Taiwan is an immensely important market. To me, I mean, just very generally, the best way we can make Taiwan a more attractive market is to make Taiwan wealthier. We do that through fair, balanced trading with Taiwan that raises all boats. And as Taiwan's wealth expands, so its ability to procure more goods and services from its friends and allies. And it does need to import a great deal of food. And some of the best food in the world is grown and reared in the Midwest. So it should buy more.
Great.
I just want to hop in and say thank you to Rupert for pointing out how beautiful the fields of Central Illinois are. I don't often hear that, but I will tell people that it depends on the time of year you come as well. If you're driving those interstates in January and February, they're not quite as attractive as they are in July and August.
Yeah. For this, I grew up in Scotland, and you know, you're either going up or down in Scotland. There's nowhere that's flat, but I can certainly appreciate beautiful farmland, and the topography is lovely. It's a really pleasant place to see.
As we like to say, Treasurer, we take those January drives to appreciate the summer drives even more through Central Illinois. All right, just a few minutes left. I want to give you all an opportunity for a few closing remarks before we conclude. Rupert, you want to kick us off?
Certainly. I've very much enjoyed this morning's discussion. I think just a couple of points couple of nails I'd like to rehammer in this. I think the future is very bright for cooperation. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity, and to maximize opportunity, there has to be recognition of what that opportunity looks like, and to be able to identify strengths and weaknesses, which can then allow for good cooperation. And I really do want to come back just this one area I'm really hitting hard at the moment, which is the importance of STEM in academic institutions, prioritizing it, getting the academic institutions the resources they need to do research and development, and couple high quality students in STEM with the R&D support, both from companies and governments, and partner those up with companies, not just domestic companies, but international companies too. That's a huge win. It's not the whole picture, nor am I arguing that. But if regions, cities, and states can get that right, they're heading a long way down the road.
Great. Thanks, Rupert. Dr. Lee.
Yeah, I think strategically, right, for a future chip semiconductor development for the new economy, we need to focus on 3 T. First, technology. Second, the tools. Third, talents. Technology is not just about how to make things, but also how to develop new innovation processes and supporting technologies to make IC, packaging, and system, the 3 level. A system connect to vehicle, connect to surveillance system, connect to our digital health system. IC just component, chip making. So technology is very important, but tools, chip without content, you drive no value, right? So of course we need that. So the AI algorithms, how to enable the future IC, chip can be more smart farming. For example, the farming, we have a smart chip. We can predict the yield we can measure the soil content and predict the growth. Like right now in July in Wisconsin, people say July 4th, the corn should in your knee high in order to have a good harvest season, right? This is what people say. Well, that's a prediction how good the future farming is. The third is talent. So I agree with Rupert. I mean, STEM, education, the other all connect together. You need a new talent, new workforce, and new skills to create the future generation and a new breed of engineers. That's what so technology, tools, and talents.
Great, thank you, Dr. Lee. Treasurer, some final thoughts?
I'd say technology, tools, talents, and then access to capital as well. I think that's where the Treasurer's Office, where we come from. That if you're asking me to pick the winners and losers in corporations, or you're asking me to find out what the newest technology is, then you have voted for the wrong person. But we do know that if we create a VC infrastructure here in Illinois to help feed and grow our entrepreneurs here in the state, and then you give them opportunities to market their products overseas, to collaborate with people overseas, we just think that there is immense potential here in the state. That's why we're investing in it. And I just want to say thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this panel. Thank you for hosting this. It was 26 years ago that a young recent college graduate packed up and moved to Tainan, Taiwan, a place he knew very little about before going, but formed great relationships, learned a lot, developed a lot, and those relationships have been important throughout my life. And so I know that if we work hard to listen to each other, to talk to each other, and to grow more relationships, our state is going to have beneficial relationships for years to come.
Great, thanks, Treasurer. And Michael Fasnacht, wrap us up here.
Thank you, Jim. A great panel. Thank you for everyone. And Jim, thank you for your moderation leadership on this. I think Chicago is extremely well positioned to be a true leader in advanced manufacturing. We have the right talent, we have the right research facilities, universities, and we have a startup entrepreneurial culture and mentality that's unmatched. So I'm excited to deepen relationships like with Taiwan and continue to build a prosperous Chicago across all 77 neighborhoods. Thank you.
That's great. And thank you, Treasurer Frericks, Dr. Jay Lee, Rupert Hammer-Chambers, and Michael Fasnacht for joining us today and for a terrific conversation. I hope everyone enjoyed the discussion, and thank you again to our sponsor, the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Chicago, for making this program possible. Please look for our next webcast under this series to take place in July on AI and the health and fitness industry, and in August on trends in the U.S. fastener and automotive industry. You can register for these webcasts and more at our website, chicagobusiness.com/events. You can always stay connected with us by visiting chicagobusiness.com for up-to-date news and insights. Thank you all for tuning in today. Stay well and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.